Welcome back, one and all, to Riftlab Clash. We're getting straight into our second game of our four that will be showing on this stream here today. Silent, we promised before we went to break we were going to have ourselves a spicy second match, and we shall deliver it. VOLIBEAR versus TEEMO.
No, and you're exactly right about that. And now VOLIBEAR is really good because it has the ability to ramp incredibly fast because of all the mighty units, and every card in here is mighty. Now, the big point that we are going to be making about this deck is that he is maining Dazzling Auroras, which has the ability to, at the end of your turn, go ahead and look through the deck until you find a unit card and immediately play it for free. So you can get a lot of big units and big threats out incredibly quick. And likewise, also taking a look at the TEEMO deck, how is this deck looking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see how this one works overall. I think we've got a ton of hidden different bits and pieces here, so it's going to be very hard for Kuzan to be able to tell what Prismaticism is truly going for. It feels like we've got a real David versus Goliath situation going here in every sense of the word. Both these players, they've won their initial matches, but in terms of deck styles, they couldn't be more different.
Well, and that's going to be the biggest thing here, especially as both competitors are getting ready to start their game. They're going to be doing their mulligan here, but you're exactly right about that. I mean, especially not only by size, VOLIBEAR versus TEEMO, that is a David and Goliath quite literally in League of Legends standards, but at the same time, you know, there are a lot of hidden cards that you might be able to utilize here, but also it looks like this TEEMO deck is even a little bit different, more so not necessarily going on the hidden side necessarily as strongly as what we've seen in the past, but instead going on, as soon as I get to the late game, I am going to hit you, and I am going to hit you hard. And so right now, I mean, these mulligans are looking really good, especially for TEEMO. It kind of is tough to see a Mind Splitter here in the beginning hand, but, you know, you're going to be almost a little bit okay with that as well.
Yeah, I was kind of curious to see how this one works out overall, as we do see the early turns passing without too much instant. Of course, one of the big problems of Kuzan with a deck full of high-end cards is that these early turns are likely to be on the more sedate side of things, allowing for Prismaticism to get out some early power, including one of the units which we saw before, the Ember Monk, which is a hugely central unit to the whole strategy.
Yeah, and you're exactly right about that. And here's the biggest thing too, especially, you know, Obelisk of Power allows you to immediately start with an additional rune out onto the battlefield. And so you're seeing both competitors here just have a lot of runes super early on. And so it'll be interesting to see, because after that, the battlefield does literally nothing else in this game. But yet, at the same time, we also have the Bottle Tree, which is really good as well, because what that specifically does, let me see.
Oh, the hides an additional card, yes.
Yep, and so that'll be very beneficial for TEEMO here, potentially.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that we've got the Obelisk being prioritized from Prismaticism here to go forward, because, you know, to talk a little bit about the Ember Monk, so if you play a card from Hidden, it will give a buff of 2 strength to that monk, so can conceivably get very strong. It looks like actually the Obelisk is going to end up being pretty much overrun in the early going.
Yeah, and that's going to be the toughest part here, is that you're trying to get ahead, because especially as soon as VOLIBEAR is able to start getting a lot of very scary things out onto the board, you can fall behind incredibly fast. And I mean, luckily TEEMO, especially in this deck list, is going to be able to have those answers, but you see right here exactly what Prismaticism is doing, is reinforcing one battlefield and one battlefield alone, not going for the second point here, but instead just trying to say, okay, if you're going to go big, I'm going to have a lot of defense here.
And taking a look, you know, while we wait for things to start happening for Kuzan on some of the other battlefields coming in, there's certainly some other ones which will kind of cause things to work out in roughly the same kind of way. We've got, you know, the Aspirant's Climb as an option for all the future games, which extends the game score by an additional 1, and more runes being coming in from across the field. So I think overall, in terms of Kuzan's game plan, things are looking pretty good, managing to clear out a little bit of the action there on Obelisk of Power, and we've got a first big drop landing.
Yep, and I mean right there we see a Carnivorous Snapvine being able to clear out the battlefield, but right before that we also saw a Falling Star, so everything just got taken out by a removal spell, but then also Snapvine being able to deal might back and forth to each other, and, you know, of course, Snapvine being able to win out on that. But likewise, we're seeing a very big answer here as well from the TEEMO player, and that is going to be with playing Mind Splitter, which was in the opening hand. And now this one specifically says that when you play me, choose an opponent, they reveal their hand, choose a card from it, and they discard that card. Period. It doesn't matter what it is. If they want to, they can discard it.
And what I really like as well, along with the hand control from Mind Splitter, is just having something big enough that it can't get taken out straight away to empty out one of these battlefields and therefore remove any of the hidden units that Prismaticism might want to put there longer term.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. This is already going to be a great, counter for the potential that VOLIBEAR has, because having a 7-might unit, it's like, well, guess what? A lot of stuff in VOLIBEAR is 7, 8, 9. And then on top of that right now, we see Prismaticism have the hand knowledge as well of his opponent. And so that's going to be crucial here, especially as he continues to move forward. And with that being said, I'm kind of curious to see what Prismaticism has potentially in his hand at this point. 5 cards in hand, and so a lot of options here. And right there, I am catching my eye at Thousand-Tailed Watcher as well.
Yeah, when we talked about this before, we've seen it in many, many other matchups as a great finisher to be able to push through. I suppose, you know, at least in this game where, again, we've had the extra rune coming in from the very beginning of the game, when we compare top end to top end, surely, at least on paper, VOLIBEAR, with its greater, quantity of top end units, should win out long term.
Yeah, and that's gonna be the tough part here. But at the same time, right now in Game 1, TEEMO is doing a great job at being able to get some answers. I mean, it's causing, if you go ahead and decide to take a battlefield here with the Carnivorous Snapvine, well, guess what? TEEMO already has an answer, and that's a whole different dynamic than what we're used to seeing with these deck lists. We've seen TEEMO that's gone very heavy on the hidden abilities, and not necessarily a whole lot of big swingers here. And this is a completely different dynamic than what we're used to seeing. And, I mean, it could be something to go against VOLIBEAR here in a big way.
And looking through the deck lists for Kuzan, there's a lot of spells being put in as ramp and similar as well. There's a little bit of the direct damage, of course, we saw, and we've already talked about the Carnivorous Snapvine as another way of doing it. One thing which I'm really looking out for as well here is the Sky Splitter, which will be, is discounted by the highest might amongst the units that Kuzan controls. So from 8 to deal 5 to potentially all the way down to 0 and 1 recycle to deal 5.
Yep, and that's going to be a big difference maker too, because you can think that you're moving into a battlefield and you're going to be taking it pretty handedly, but at the same time, oops, nope, my character or my unit just got 5 damage. It's going to be a trade. Cool. Well, that really hurts. And so there's a lot of kind of sneaky answers that VOLIBEAR can have that TEEMO's going to need to be a little bit conscious of, but still coming out now with Thousand-Tailed Watcher is going to be a big difference maker. Every unit in the battlefield right now is getting -3 on Kuzan's side, and that is a difference maker right there, because just like that, instead of having 11, you're going down to 5. That is very difficult, because now the Thousand-Tail is able to go in with Accelerate and just take this battlefield if there are no responses. But still, it looks like a challenge is going to be coming in, and that is going to be where Snapvine is going to be able to deal the final damage needed to go ahead and potentially trade here. Or it might not actually be... might not be the trade that we're looking at, because that'll deal 3 damage to the... And the Snapvine will die at that point. And then 2 damage will then go to the Thousand-Tail, and it still will not be the 7.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, we do still clear out the field. But yeah, able to get the Snapvine back. Okay, and then of course, with all of that said and done, we've got Prismaticism able to move across the 7-drop Mind Splitter from before, and start to get some early points in. So even if, as we said before, Kuzan has got some great potential, that play going very south very quickly means that they will need to get re-established soon, or these big drops for a TEEMO deck, which seems a little counterintuitive to say, will get too much momentum.
Yeah, and well, that's going to be the biggest thing here, is that there is a couple of abilities here in the VOLIBEAR deck that could potentially get some accelerating out, get some abilities to get back into the battlefield. If you have another Snapvine even potentially, that's not going to be enough to start clearing the battlefields. And so you're really going to be using this turn to try to build back up your battlefield or your base to be able to start attacking the battlefields. And right now, we see that Prismaticism is going up to 5 points so far to 1 for VOLIBEAR, and that is a very difficult thing to try to come back from.
That Draven coming in as well, with the effect of his might being increased by your points. It's such an awful thing to have when your opponent is on 5 points and you are just on 1 overall. I was hoping we'd maybe see a Dead Bloom Predator, which we played onto occupied enemy battlefields, and just come in immediately with the 8 strength would be such a good setup here to deal with anything Prismatism has got out. Because right now we don't have those hidden, traps in place to really make it hard to play onto the battlefields.
Yeah, exactly right. And right now, I mean, we see that, Prismaticism is in a really good spot. And, using 4 of his runes, instead of playing a hidden card, just going ahead and drawing 2 cards on top of that. And look at that card difference. VOLIBEAR is struggling. 1 card in hand to 6. And a hidden card is going down. We now know what that is. And that's going to be a really fun answer to try to play around. And that's also the mystery of this TEEMO deck. Right now, Kuzan doesn't necessarily know the deck list here, and that is also going to be a pretty big advantage, whereas for the VOLIBEAR deck, it can be a little bit more, or it can be a lot easier to interpret what could potentially be in this deck.
Alright, one last chance here for Kuzan. Has definitely fallen very far behind, despite what looked to be a decent start. A lot of the game, of course, as we expected, with the extra room coming in, thanks to the Obelisk of Power, around the, just playing out as much as we can early on. As we do have the dazzling Aurora you mentioned before. To me, Silent, this feels like it might be too late to make the kind of difference it would make otherwise.
Yeah, and there's been times in the past where people who are playing Dazzling Aurora in their main deck just try to ramp as fast as they can to get to that point. Unfortunately, though, yeah, this is going to be almost too little too late, going up to soon to be, 7 in this case. And so you're almost hoping for a Dead Bloom Predator to potentially be able to go into a battlefield. But still, that is going to be a great answer to maybe try to shift this game into VOLIBEAR's favor. But still, again, I think you're right that it is a little bit too little too late, because that VOLIBEAR is a very scary ad. But again, it's not readied, and it will be at the start of this next turn.
Yes, so that's the 12 strength VOLIBEAR, if I don't miss my guess, with the shield and the tank effects as well. An incredible unit, but yeah, we're up to 7. I mean, I don't think things are going to get any easier from Kuzan from here. We'll see if maybe they've got something else left in the tank, but it feels like the chips have kind of fallen a little out of order for Kuzan's deck in order to really, get the momentum, or at least, not necessarily get the momentum, I suppose, but keep Prismaticism from running away with the game too quickly.
Well, and that's been the biggest thing here, and you're exactly right about that. If Kuzan would have been able to get the Dazzling Auroras out even a turn earlier, that would have been such a difference maker. You're looking at how much might is being added to these battlefields. Not only that, but we see Prismaticism having 8 cards in hand and continually being able to hide as many cards as they want and be okay. Still 6 cards in hand after all of that. I mean, you look at all these answers. Gust is a dead card in this case, but it's also three Stupefies. Maybe not as strong as you would like, but still, I mean, that's a lot of card draw as well, just playing Stupefy for even just adding 3 more cards to your hand. Not bad at all. And -3 could be a very big difference maker as well.
Well, to follow on to your point, there were so many cards in that hand which could have been terrible this game if they had shown up earlier rather than they've just been kind of an extra bonus left over. Because, they don't match up well into the rest of what the deck is doing. They have got, a lot of these traps have got limits on how powerful a unit they can even interact with. So, a different game where all those traps came first we could see these big monsters on Kuzan's side just completely roll over a point and have no real reply.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something that I absolutely love, that we get to have these kinds of tournaments and leagues and things of that nature before the game is even out. Because, I mean, you're taking a look at these hands, you're taking a look at this gameplay. This meta still feels very undefined in this case, and now you're seeing a TEEMO deck which hasn't had a lot of representation. Now we're figuring out maybe more of a structure that makes this deck really competitive against, like, even a VOLIBEAR, and we saw him take down Master Yi last round as well in a 2-0, which is something that maybe we might not have comprehended a week ago. So this is such a cool thing to be able to see on what these decks are able to do, especially as a Blazing Scorcher comes down onto the field.
We did see this from Kuzan before, so now we've got the chance. We've got the VOLIBEAR, the imposing VOLIBEAR, sorry to use his full name, active and ready to go. We've got the accelerated Blazing Scorcher, so we can maybe start coming in, getting some points, and also making Draven stronger as well. The problem is, it's 7 points to 1 in favor of Prismaticism. I mean, you know that if you go into the Obelisk, you're facing down multiple hidden cards, but VOLIBEAR perhaps is big enough to just bull through.
And that's going to be the difficult thing here, is, yeah, you're exactly right, and 2 hidden cards where this VOLIBEAR is moving into. That's going to be a little bit difficult to maybe try to figure out here, but still, you're able to kind of figure this out, and you might almost be hoping that the Dazzling Auroras is going to be hitting a Dead Bloom to really make sure that your opponent doesn't get the 8th point here. That's still going to be a trade, and now the other card is going to still be up at 6 might again, so you're going to have to figure out how to attack in, and I think this is exactly it, where he's going to be either going ahead and playing a Carnivorous Snapvine or trying to go ahead and get a Dead Bloom at the end of turn. But here we go, seeing the Stupefies coming in clutch here to go ahead and try to get those numbers down even lower. So instead, they're going to be trading. And here comes all 3 just like that.
Oh boy, we promised you, gentle viewers, a show here today. And David versus Goliath. I mean, it's the story that's become famous for a reason. The little yodel that could just somehow bring the Titans to heel up to 8 points. And we are done with game 1, right into sideboarding. I mean, Prismaticism had a hell of a game that time round, and it feels like this sideboard is a great chance to try and get rid of some of the cards we were talking about before that could potentially be liabilities.
Well, and here's going to be the biggest thing. TEEMO had a really good showing, and, necessarily there wasn't a bad card here. Maybe taking out the Echo in this case to try to maybe move some things in, such as another Mind Splitter, another Thousand-Tailed Watcher, especially against such high might that VOLIBEAR is able to dish out. And likewise, even taking a look over at the VOLIBEAR deck. I don't know. We'll see what these sides can possibly do. What are you thinking here?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, it doesn't feel like you need to change out an absolute ton here, but I think Rebuke makes a lot of sense, to be able to put units back into hand. If you're just buying time to get established, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm not sure the Fallen Comet is going to be quite enough to be able to actually take out things. I really want to, if we can, look at the VOLIBEAR and the side deck there, because that feels like that's where we need to see more changes happen.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big thing here, is it's like, how do you go ahead and get back into this game? And it very well might be, let's go ahead and take out the smaller users, the Blazing Scorcher, for example, and maybe just adding 2 more of the VOLIBEAR and really hoping that we get that Dazzling Aurora early in the hand. Vi's going to be potentially a really good option here as well, to go ahead and add additional might to Vi for recycling each card in your discard. And, swinging in pretty big. But, time will tell to see if VOLIBEAR can make a difference. But we've seen this TEEMO now go 3-0 in this tournament so far. Will TEEMO be able to then go 4-0?
I mean, it's pretty scary times where you have to deal with the mightiest of tiny TEEMOs, the Yodel who could. But as we get into game 2, let's take a quick look at our players' hands and see what they're starting off here. Of course, we'll be seeing the change of battlefields as well, so we won't have that free rune that we saw last game.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is going to actually be a really fun start for the Volibear in this case. He has a little bit of ramp. He has a 5 cost here, and also starting with a Snapvine is going to be something very great to slow down your opponent. But the Dazzling Auroras could be a very big difference maker here. And getting things moving. So that's going to be really fun to be able to see, and it looks like accidentally Kuzan ended up grabbing his entire rune deck. The way that you play a simulator instead of in real life. So
I mean, that's how I play. I don't know about you. I just grab my deck, throw it at the opposition, and if they don't duck, then I win.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but we're seeing all of a sudden just all this ramp going, and even being out to get the Blazing Scorcher, you don't have to recycle necessarily at that point unless you want to give it Accelerate. But with the Dazzling Auroras in hand, you can just go ahead and get out a good might, get some more ramp going, and prepare for the Dazzling Auroras coming out on turn 3. So some good potential there with this deck starting out.
Yeah, when we're already set up to see the contrast in the previous game when the Aurora really came out too late to make any kind of difference at all. But there we go, the Blazing Scorcher will be coming into the field. As you said, not going to pay to accelerate it this time round. I think this time Kuzan's feeling a lot more comfortable. Well, Prismatism is playing like a regular game. It's getting some good resource advantage. You have to know, again, the long game is always going to belong to the Volibear.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's really funny also seeing the battlefields as well, because we got another obelisk of power coming in. This time, though, it's from the TEEMO side instead of the Volibear side. So they both kind of get that advantage there. And then likewise, we also have the Aspirant Climb, which is a really interesting one as well, because you have to win the game by 1 additional point. And so that's a little bit in Volibear's favor, but because it lengthens the game. But with how TEEMO's been playing, it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like with the pieces we've got in place right now, with Kuzan being able to get in and at least create a little bit of space. I mean, talk to me about the TEEMO deck in sort of general terms here, because presumably, if we do see Kuzan, as we have here, get some presence down at the bottom battlefield, the Obelisk of Power, it's going to be much, much harder for Prismaticism to get in there themselves and start setting up the hidden cards.
Well, and you're exactly right. And the thing is, too, in the sideboard, there was 0 gear destruction in this case. And so the Dazzling Aurora is coming out here, and there's not going to be anything to stop that. It's going to be out until the end of the game. And we see now a Dead Bloom Predator hitting, and just like that, it is going to have a response, though. That's going to be a really good response by TEEMO, coming in clutch with the... Let me see.
That was So not the Rebuke, because it's not gone back to hand. It was one of the traps that sends it back to the base.
So, yeah, that's going to be a big deal, though, because that's going to be another victory point right there that is going to be solidified, and being able to hold that down. But, I mean, still, having that Dead Bloom Predator coming out onto the battlefield is a really big deal. And that is 8 might that you're going to have to now face out on turn 3. And so very difficult to come back.
I'm definitely feeling like this has got a very different vibe to what we saw from game 1. I mean, while Prismaticism is ahead at this point, they're being forced to burn some of their hidden cards just to try and keep things from getting too out of hand too quickly. I think the second that we see Kuzan actually break through, and start taking control of both battlefields, for me, that would feel like the game is over already.
Yeah, it's already going to be a very big uphill battle. I mean, TEEMO's ability is going to be interesting here, just because, you may pay 1 to hide a card with hidden instead of the recycle. That's going to help you at least keep a lot of your runes intact. At the same time, though, you need to continue to gather your high might units in this case. And so it's really difficult to have, the Dazzling Aurora out, because it's like, I'm guaranteed a 5 might or higher unit. And already we're now seeing a Sabotage come out to be able to take something from their hand that is a non-unit. And I mean, that's a pretty impressive hand then to go ahead and take something away from. Okay,
so one thing I do want to point out as we see the Sabotage doing its groundwork there is Dr. Mono, a card we didn't get to actually see being played in the previous game. another one of the high-end solutions that we've gotten here for Prismaticism.
Yeah, correct about that, but the biggest thing is going to be making sure that you have the discards in hand, and I mean, that's going to be helping having a Carnivorous Snapvine coming out in this case. The TEEMO is going to be activated, and being able to then still be defend this battlefield in this case, and hopefully score another point, and that's going to be one of the biggest keys here for Prismaticism here, is making sure that they can at least hold these battlefields and gain points, but I mean, just having the Dazzling Aurora come out on turn 3, it's like, how do you take care of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is you don't. You know, we've got infinite value coming through. We've got huge titanic creatures coming back from like the Titans of old, just landing, you know, presumably every single turn. You know, it's only a curve that gets worse and worse. I generally just don't think Prismaticism has gotten enough ground before that happened, as much as there was barely any time for that to happen. As we will see, desperation measures again. We've seen cards traded off just to try and get a little bit more time and to hopefully grab 1 or 2 more points, but we've got to remember the Aspirant's Climb, 9 points needed for a win. I just don't think the TEEMO deck can get there remotely in time.
Well, and here's the biggest thing. The Dazzling Auroras just hit another monster of a unit here, being Kerrigan the Infernal. Now, when you play me, draw 1 for each of your units that are mighty, aka they have 5 or more might. And that also does count itself in this case, so that's going to be a little bit helpful to at least get 1 or 2 cards now added to hand for a total of 6 cards in Kuzan's hand. And I mean, look at how scary that looks. But you were right about the Mundo in hand.
Ay. I mean, yeah, I have to think at this point, you know, again, we're in a situation we saw from before. Prismaticism never had to really deal with the situation. Is while the cards in hand for Prismaticism are very strong, they are all a step weaker than everything Kuzan is going to be bringing out and also getting for free.
Yeah, and like you said, though, this is surprisingly a clash of titans. You saw how big of might units they had on each side, and so it's going to be, well, who can play it more? Now, the hardest part about the VOLIBEAR side is that all the characters that he would want to get out with the Dazzling Auroras, a lot of them are in his hand, unfortunately, and that's going to be a little bit harder to take care of, but still, this is going to be some good answers. And just like that, it looks like a Falling Star is going to be coming out, being able to deal 6 damage to the unit, and now being reinforced by TEEMO. Now, TEEMO is right now at 4 might for being played. He gets +3 as well, so that's going to be something to keep in mind with this. But still, that is going to be nothing to worry about here with Kerrigan the Infernal. I mean, that's an easy take.
Yeah, I mean,
especially with your opponent tapped out.
Against other decks where, you know, having a 5 strength, you know, very cheap unit would be something to be intimidated of. I think we're way beyond the event horizon here. I mean, the points have just stalled out from Prismaticism here. At this point, I'm honestly starting to think of, you know, of Game 3 of this series and what we might even be seeing Prismaticism trying to do. Apart from just, you know, hope the third game doesn't play out the same way.
Yeah, and that's going to be almost the biggest thing here, too, is that you're going to be seeing and almost hoping that the Dazzling Auroras doesn't come into effect, because there is no answer to that. No matter what, you are getting a very high-cost unit out onto the battlefield for free. And so it's like, you know, go ahead and take a couple of points in the beginning, like what we saw Prismaticism do. I'm going to keep being able to attack over and over again. Blazing Scorcher comes out. I'm going to be defending here. This is going to come out. Let's get this. Now we're seeing what Aurora is going to be able to add to this well. And it looks like it is going to be a Snapvine. Nothing is going to necessarily be happening with that in this case.
I think this is a good moment in which to... I'm just going to check my wording here. Yes. I believe the phrase goes, stop, he's already dead.
No, and exactly. I mean, look at how much might. 14 on one battlefield and then 14 on the other as well. Mundo's coming in. That is a really big unit right there, going up to 14. Being able to answer that, or 15, being able to answer that in and of itself, because it gets +1 for each card in the discard, but it recycles 3. if I remember correctly, at the start of each turn.
Yes, so that's going to go down to 12 as it comes in. We've got the 2 big creatures on both sides, so we've already got, let's see, so 14 on one and 14 on the other, so it's already going to end up being smaller than what's on the battlefields on the other side. I mean, I think at this point, Prismatism's just really just using this as additional sideboarding thinking time, because, as you can see, I mean, I feel like we're almost ready to start our own cinematic universe here, Silent, because we've got ourselves all the monsters we would ever need for a big old kaiju battle.
You're certainly not wrong about that in the slightest. And I mean, again, it's like, hey, as Kuzan, I'm just going to reinforce these battlefields. What are you going to do about it? And it's like, hey, here we go. Another 9-drop going up to just 18 with both of those now. And that's going to be a lot of card draw as well. Because, again, anything that's mighty, that's 5 units that are now on the battlefield. That is 5 cards drawn. We see Kuzan being up to 10 now with that. And, I mean, gosh, what do you even do in this situation?
I'm just looking through the deck list here and be like, is the answer Blast Cone Fey? Give a unit -2 strength? Yeah, probably not. Is it going to be any of the other cards that let us interact with low toughness units? Aye. I mean, this is just an extended victory lap, I think, at this point from Kuzan.
Well, and that's going to be why it's such a big difference on how Game 3 is going to go. Can they find the Dazzling Auroras? Can they build up their battlefield and just dominate in this case? Because if they miss it, I mean, we've seen what TEEMO can do, and it was pretty scary in this case.
Alright, doing a little bit more, just to get a few more of those monsters out. As you said, we've got less out here than perhaps we need to, but I think we are just running down the clock at this point, with Prismaticism just not having anything left to say. Again, both these boards too big for Dr. Mundo, who is, I think, the biggest creature or biggest unit in the entirety of the TEEMO deck. As we'll see, we'll go down in strength again, and just have to wait until we tick up to 9, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly, and that's going to be the hardest part here. Is you're exactly right. They are on a clock, and this is one of the biggest things, and one of the biggest weaknesses about VOLIBEAR sometimes is that if you are able to deal with the units that they put out onto the battlefield, then you stand a really good chance at taking down VOLIBEAR, because they, with how high of cost that they have for each of their units, if you deal with those, they're not necessarily able to get utilized and build up like they've seen. Dazzling Aurora comes in and ignores all of that in this case, and just keeps on hitting hard again and again. And so just trying to get some movement here, going to be able to at least take a battlefield, going up to 5, but even still, having the Watcher is at least a little bit of help. Mundo's going to be able to move in. That's going to be tough to get back.
I mean, I think the Watcher's the best answer you have at this point, because there's so many Titanic monsters that this is a significant downgrade in terms of power. So is able to go through, gets one more onto the Mundo. We should be able to go through and then clean out the rest of the battlefield. So that's something. But, I mean, that was probably the best play you had available in the deck. There's no more copies of Thunder's Thousand Tail Watcher to work with, though it will get recycled by Dr. Mundo, but there's no way there's enough time to get back and play that over again.
Yeah, and that's going to be the tricky part here, too, because Mundo is just going to keep getting weaker. It's going to be a little bit harder to get stuff into your discard at this point. And likewise, though, 11 cards in hand for Kuzan.
Hey.
Versus 3. for Prismaticism. It's like, I have the field built. I know what I need to do here. And even if you still just keep holding the battlefield here, this is going to be the biggest part. It's like, and here's the thing too, especially as Prismaticism, it's like, I don't want to necessarily surrender just yet, because there might be, if I get like another Mundo out, potentially maybe I'm able to go ahead then and get an answer. I might be able to find an answer with another Watcher. Maybe they just whiff a little bit, getting like a Blazing Dragon out instead of something like, you know, what we've seen with the Dead Blooms and things of that nature. So it's like, let's keep playing. Let's see what we can maybe do to get back into this game. But unfortunately, yeah, this is going to be a very uphill battle.
So, Silent, I mean, if we continue our characterization of this as a David versus Goliath situation, there was one thing which characterized David in that interaction, which was a pretty relentless sense of optimism heading into it, which I'm glad that you're representing for us here on broadcast.
No, I'm happy to. Well, and that's the thing is like you don't want to necessarily count yourself out until the game is won. And, you know, on either side, you don't want to say, haha, I got this game. And I mean, even though, look at the card advantage here, look at the answers that they have. I mean, the 2 Dravens in hand alone, that's going to be insane because that's +7 in might coming in on that. But even still, it's like until victory is actually until victory is actually won, I do not want to count myself one way or the other because in an instant it can change. Now, likewise, is that possible for Prismaticism? Not necessarily, but there is still that slim chance.
I'm going to go on a limb and say, I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong, son. I really do. But I don't think there is. I don't think there has been for quite a while. But I admire the attempt. Honestly, like, at this point, I take this more of a again, like, you know, the celebration run here from Kuzan. I did see someone in the chat saying, Plutonium saying, poor TEEMO. Like, you know, it's just absolutely getting stomped all over here. But I think this does illustrate for us pretty well heading into what's seeming to be a likely Game 3, as we will see the trade-off up at the top. The sheer level of threat that Kuzan's decks presented, because I think in Game 1, you could have been forgiven for thinking, you know what, okay, you know, it's a fine deck, but perhaps not reliable. In this case, I think if we get anywhere near this start again in Game 3, and Kuzan will have the series.
Yeah, exactly. And Deadblue Predator just tried to go ahead and move in, but it has to be moved into an occupied battlefield in this case. And still, especially with the cards in hand, there's not necessarily a whole lot of options for the TEEMO player, but still, having the Mind Splitter is going to be a little bit helpful. But still, you're going to see, you know, Kuzan going up to 8 at this point, and then, you know, moving up after that if they're able to, you know, just hold the battlefield. So after this turn, there very well could be a concede. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to be happening here.
Well, if you were saying, you know, I suppose the main strategic advantage with the way things are at the moment, as I think, yes, I might well be packing things up, is maybe just a chance to see a few more cards in the opponent's deck, but I believe, yeah, we are all kinds of done there, as we have been for quite a while. Officially moving up 9-5 means we're on to our final sideboard of our second series here today. That's time, of course, we've got 2 more series to come once this one is done. Enfist will be swapping in for me there, but for now, this final sideboard of Series 2, you know, what do you want to see Kuzan doing, and what do you want to see Prismaticism doing?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is, of course, you saw the impact of Dazzling Aurora there, and it's like, well, let's just keep that rolling. Let's try, again, I think the Volibears being in the deck from the sideboard is going to be absolutely crucial. Maybe even going with the 3rd Sabotage as well is going to be a big difference maker. You're not going to be running the Vise from the side deck because you don't want the Dazzling Auroras to necessarily hit that. You want to keep that momentum going and match the big stuff and say, what do you have, TEEMO? What can you do here? Likewise, though, on the TEEMO side, again, TEEMO's just going to mainly be hoping that the Dazzling Auroras is not hit. So it's going to be an interesting Game 3 for sure.
And it's worth noting, as we can see here on the deck list, the Dazzling Aurora is only a 2-of, so it's not unreasonable to think you may not even see it the entire game long. On TEEMO's side here, I think, though, the rebukes for me feel like they're the most important factor coming into this one, just because they are not tied to a particular strength of unit. You know, two and recycle 2, return a unit on the battlefield to its owner's hand, buys some crucial time. But I like this hand from Prismaticism. On the other side, from Kuzan, the Sabotage you pointed out from before.
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest thing here is again, just trying to hit the ground running on TEEMO side. I need to get control of this game as quickly as possible, and I need to have the cards utilized in hand to be able to move around. And so right now we see some good momentum here in each other's hands as we go into the start of this game, and we'll see what TEEMO's able to do here.
Watchful Sentry will be our first, and Kuzan, of course, will be going second, so gets the extra rune and a chance to get in those mighty bears and friends as soon as possible. It will be going immediately in for Sabotage. I think something just having vision of that hand against against the deck full of hidden cards feels like it's way too good to ever not want to do.
Yeah, exactly, and that's been the interesting part, because especially in the beginning of this meta, we saw a lot of people citing this deck, because it is a really great card, especially if going against Kaiser or things of that nature. But man, especially just with having this card in the main deck, you can make a really big impact in so many matchups, and you're seeing right here how big of a matchup that can actually, or how big of an impact it can make in this matchup as well. We're able to not only just get the hand knowledge, which is crucial enough, especially for a 1 cost, but on top of that, to even potentially remove something, and especially if you put it in the recycle and onto the bottom, you're not seeing that again. Sorry, but you're just not. There's not enough cards to go through the deck in this case. And so TEEMO is coming out swinging still, going up to 3 just like that, though.
Yeah, I just want to catch up on some of my cards. So Catalyst of Eons coming in from Kuzan, so that's 2 extra runes coming into play, accelerating things dramatically. And thank you very much. On the other side, though, from Prismaticism, we have got our old friend coming in, the Ember Monk. Remember, gets the bonus of 2 strength when a hidden card is played, and has one in the pocket there. So, Silent, in terms of what we got out on the board early on from Prismaticism, this all seems to be going to plan.
Yeah, so far, and it's like you got to start getting some answers going out as the VOLIBEAR. You got to try to go ahead and slow them down, because, at this point we only need 8 points. Again, we don't need 9 because of the battlefields that are being played here. And so it's like, well, let's see what we can do. And we didn't necessarily see a Deadbloom Predator, which could, be played into an occupied battlefield. Might have drawn that at this point, but at the same time, it's like that hidden card is just so scary to try to get involved with.
Let's, as we see further ramping taking place let's talk a little bit about our battlefields. So from Kuzan's side of things, we've got the Sigil of the Storm. When you conquer here, recycle one of her runes. So if anything, that feels like that's actually going to slow things down considerably.
Yeah, and it very well could. And the biggest thing, though, is TEEMO has a great base built up already. He has some great utilization of cards that he'll be able to use this next turn as well. Could go ahead and get a Mind Splitter potentially out onto the battlefield here. That is going to be a lot of recycling, but at the same time, that is going to be an impact to also see your opponent's hand and then be able to discard a card as well. And that's going to be played out immediately to a battlefield for that extra insurance. And so with that, we're now seeing what is in the hand of Kuzan.
And remember, in this case, it's not tied to just non-unit cards. So it potentially could take out either of the units here. Going to go for the big lad. There, that's one of the Cadregrain and the Inferno, one of the draw engines for the deck, removed from the field. And now also, Prismaticism knows for sure that a challenge is waiting and can now try and play around it more effectively.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big thing, too, because if they go ahead and play that big unit, then they can immediately go into the challenge as well and just make a big impact where they go ahead and even, take out the Mind Splitter in this case, if they have something like Cadrin the Infernal, something along those lines, And so there's a lot of utility that you can still have, but, right now, 5-0 against Kuzan, and we're seeing just the power and speed that Prismaticism is able to utilize here with TEEMO.
This is so interesting because we've had both the decks do what they want to. For the TEEMO deck, from Prismaticism, played a lot of early units, got the early combos going. From Kuzan, we've got the the regular part of it going. We've ramped up, but we don't have the Dazzling Aurora in place. So we don't have an overwhelming amount of units early on. I think you're right in kind of where it feels like you're going with this, which is that Prismaticism, if we don't have the Aurora factor in play, feels like the deck momentum is just vastly outstripping everything Kuzan's throwing out.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And again, like I said, this is the hard part too, because it's like I can only play pretty much one big unit a turn, and that's about it. And so it's like, well, TEEMO's like, cool, well, I'll play 3 a turn. Next turn, I'll play 1 big unit. After that, I'll have some hidden cards that probably get me more cards. And, you know, you just see how much more wide TEEMO can go in this case. And, man, I'm impressed. I was already, before this tournament, I was almost counting TEEMO out. Maybe tier 2 kind of thing. Maybe the outlier kind of deck. But watching this gameplay, going against a VOLIBEAR, which is also probably, you know, a tier 2, tier 3, you know, you see Fight or Flight, one of the best cards for purple right now. I would even argue probably the best card in purple, in my opinion. I love that it can just go ahead and defend so well, because a lot of times people attack in with just one unit in this case, and you're just like, nope, you're gone, and now you're spent. You can't move for the rest of the turn. Good luck.
What we do see for this one is a furious VOLIBEAR entering the field. I think for the first time this series, his effect's going to be, when on an attack, dealing 5 damage split amongst any number of enemy units there. That seems like a great way to deal with some of the smaller, you know, kind of strategic pieces Prismaticism has been playing with up until this point.
Yep, and this could be a good momentum shift as well, because we just saw the challenge come out as well. So it was 9 versus 7 against the Mind Splitter, and the VOLIBEAR was able to defeat that with ease. And so right now, I mean, you still have the hidden card that you can worry about a little bit, and still on top of that, it's like next turn is victory unless somehow Kuzan can take both battlefields. But not only that, he has to be able to take both battlefields, but then hold on to it for the entire time, essentially, and hope that somehow, Prismaticism can't just take and hold a battlefield or take back both.
And that seems so difficult to do at this point, where, yeah, you can maybe clear out one of these battlefields, but given there's still time to be able to throw in, you know, Prismaticism to throw in more resources into the other, it feels like it's going to be very, very difficult to completely clear the field. Let's take a look at the hand. So we can see that Prismaticism, Guerrilla Warfare, we haven't actually seen being used as of yet, but one, the signature spell that lets you get back your hidden cards, a 2-for-1, and I mean, you know, it's just so hard to get past that kind of value.
Yep, and I mean, still, the Snapvine is going to be pretty helpful as well, because you can go ahead and even feel free to trade in to the, bottom battlefield here and then be able to take both, so you at least got some momentum there. But still, you're going to be hoping that maybe when you go ahead and play, for example, your Council of the Past, being able to draw 2 cards, you're going to be getting some big units as a response, maybe even a Thousand-Tailed Watcher, to be able to go ahead and -3 and really attack into that battlefield to really try to hold to get that final 8th point. But man, VOLIBEAR might be making a little bit of a turnaround here.
Yeah, we do see kind of value plays from Prismaticism bringing out, you know, the extra bits and pieces here. Of course, the hidden cards being revealed does mean that they will be less effective in the surprise factor, but I mean, we're up to 7 now, so at this point, Prismaticism just needs to hold on a little bit more. Even if Kuzan knows exactly what they're facing down, it may still not be enough.
Yeah, and that's going to be the thing, is getting up to 7 is exactly what Prismaticism needs to really stand a strong chance here. And so we'll see what this is going to be able to do in this case. And we're seeing the TEEMO being activated, but not only that, the TEEMO Legend ability was also utilized here in this case. And so, well, it'll be interesting to see how this is going to be able to go. Now, for those of you who might not know, the TEEMO Legend ability is a pretty good one as well, because you can go ahead and pay 1 and tap to put a TEEMO unit you own into your hand from your champion zone or the board. So in that case, you saw the TEEMO get revealed as the hidden card, and he immediately activated the legend ability to say, yep, you're out of there, and take him back into hand.
So let's take stock of where we are. 7 points to 0. Prismaticism, 1 map, Kuzan with the other. 1 more to go on the series, which is this one here. If, you know, I'm still kind of trying to make sure I understand everything in perfect detail here, but based on what we've got here so far, am I right in understanding if Prismaticism still has possession of either of the battlefields by the time the turn swings back around to them again, this one will be over.
Yes, exactly. And so he's trying to build up his battlefields to the best of his ability. If he did replay the TEEMO card as the hidden card here, then that is going to be 4 boosted from the TEEMO card alone, then 2 from the Ember Monk for playing a hidden card, and you're immediately at 12. So it's like... but we still have the Snapvine that could very well be utilized to at least really knock that down here. And so that could be something to at least take back both of the battlefields without giving your opponent the victory. But again, like we said, still being at 7 points, that is such an uphill battle to be in right now as Kuzan.
Oh boy. I mean, if you talk about these turning point moments here, Prismatism so close to closing out the series, it doesn't seem impossible, son. As much as I was cynical in Game 2, it doesn't seem impossible that if Kuzan can repossess both of the battlefields, that it will be certainly difficult for Prismaticism to get back in and get that final point.
Yeah, and so that was the biggest thing, and they just need to be able to take this back if somehow Kuzan is able to find the answers here. And that's what he's mucking over right now. You have TEEMO who has at least tapped out, but both battlefields have a hidden card. Now, not only that, but what hidden cards did Prismaticism even put in? Because you could very well easily have swapped the TEEMO around, for example, and then been able to just call it good there, and now TEEMO's at the top battlefield, And so it's like there's such a mystery here on what you could do, or even having like a fight or flight being down on the battlefield as well, and being like, hey, you're attacking in with one? I'm okay with that. I'm just going to send you back. And so it's really tying the hands of Kuzan right here.
So Snapvine comes down, and that's going to remove at least the Ravenbloom student from the bottom battlefield of Targon's Peak. But we're all holding our breath here to see where this one goes. For Kuzan, the decision is so big. Silent, we know we've got the VOLIBEAR in play. Furious VOLIBEAR, he'll do that 5 damage, split around. Of course, as you mentioned, we still don't know what those hidden cards are, so Kuzan's going to have to at least make part of this decision with incomplete information.
Yep, and here's the difficult thing too. I'm just impressed. We might very well have a 2-0 TEEMO here, which again is something that we might not have necessarily assumed going into this tournament with how little TEEMO was actually utilized. And so right there we already see in this case TEEMO goes up to 4 because of the boost. That is going to be a straight up trade. So that's going to be at least no point for VOLIBEAR, but no point at least in that battlefield for Prismaticism. So he has to take this other battlefield. And I'm curious to be, what is he going to do? He has a lot of runes to be able to use.
Well, we know that the Ember Monk is going up to 6 with the hidden. I believe may already be 6 because of the previous card. So we'll see. Everything piled into Targon's Peak. I don't think there's going to be anything that can stop this from happening entirely. Fight or Flight does put 1 back, but I don't know if the...
And that's the thing. Ember Monk, because you just play a hidden card, he gets +2. Doesn't matter how many hidden cards you play. So the other battlefield activated, gave him +2. He activated his in his battlefield. It's not a respecter of battlefields. Boom, he was able to go up and just immediately get some really great answers here. And man, that is a way to win the game as we see TEEMO go ahead and take down a VOLIBEAR.
It was a real ride of the Valkyries in there at the tail end, wasn't it, Silent? It really felt like it was a recoverable game in the way that Game 2 didn't feel that way for a really long time. But Prismatism, congratulations. That was a performance palm there. Absolutely. We didn't know what to expect coming to this one. VOLIBEAR versus TEEMO. But it's actually turned out to be an incredible matchup.
No, you're exactly right about that. And it's like, yeah, in this case, TEEMO was able to move too fast and VOLIBEAR wasn't able to find that momentum. You saw that momentum shift with the Auroras coming in during Game 2, but unless they were able to find that, TEEMO was able to just hit the ground running and find the answers needed to be able to secure the game. So TEEMO is now going in 2-0 into the rest of this tournament.
Oh boy, I mean, it's a hell of a run. Yeah, as we mentioned right back at the beginning, of course, our players playing in their pods, trying to earn points and raise their standings within the Riftlab League. I think as well, Silent, there's the additional bonus of being able to deliver the sinking feeling into your opponent's stomach where they realize that, you know, it's a player like Prismaticism they'll be facing across the board.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, there's going to be some great stuff. And Prismaticism has already had a great showing. We've seen him get second place in the Riftlab a couple weeks ago now. And right now, he's proving in a completely different deck. He played Darius in that one and TEEMO in this one. This guy's got a lot of versatility, a lot of utility. And man, he is proving why he deserves to be 2-0 in this tournament and why he got second place in the last one as well. Really exciting stuff to see there.
Alright, general friends, we'll be headed to break. When we return at approximately half past, so around 15 minutes or so, we will have the next series for you. Silent will still be here. I'll be handing my mic across to end this. So hopefully you'll stick around and be ready for the rest of today's games. So far they've been amazing. The Riftlab clash will continue after this break.